Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from the generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Stoney.
Hello.
And Jason.
Hello, everyone.
I just said that like always because
Yes.
it's like habit. But you actually, this is your second episode back. From
I'm back.
Being a little under the weather. But today is a very special episode because we have the one and only my mom, Terri. We have her on the podcast.
So can you call her Terri, or do you have to say Mom?
Well, I was going to say mom, but I mean, I don't think the audience as a whole would know who that is. But we have talked about my mom, quote unquote, in the podcast
numerous times.
Yes,
Absolutely.
we have.
So,
The topics come up.
Because technically, I knew your mom before you were here.
of course,
Oh.
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
And I think
Yes, he knew you
right.
long before.
Once upon I think you showed me pictures
I
of me
did.
like in a diaper sitting on a table
we
while
were playing
cards or something.
cards,
Yeah.
and you were sitting on the table, and Stoney was across, and he was playing cards,
right.
and yeah,
Wonderful.
So, just a
Yeah.
little wee thing.
So yeah, but first of all, again, how are you? How are you doing, Stoney? I know you look and sound better than you did last week, even.
I'm doing better.
Right.
Today I had physical therapy, and we were back at the ENTs getting some, audiogram, baby? What's the audiogram for retesting everything with my hearing?
The lovely and talented Miranda's in our studio audience.
That's right.
So,
Hello, Miranda.
And so we just, every day is just something new. It's nonstop. And we're just trying to do a little bit better today than we did yesterday.
Hey, one step at a time.
Yeah, but you sound good, though, Stoney.
I'm
You do.
trying.
It's giving me a bit of deja vu because I feel like we had very similar conversations last year, just one step at a time.
I know,
it's
right?
just one
Yep.
thing after the next. We'll make it to the next bit.
Poor Miranda keeps saying that I'll do anything to get out of that honeymoon.
So today, because we have my mother on the show, she is in education and she is a teacher of, would you consider like middle school and high school, or mostly just high school?
middle school and high school,
Okay.
6th through 12th grade,
Homeschool.
homeschool.
Hoorah.
It is classified as an independent private school, but
Wonderful.
my students are registered as homeschoolers.
What would the difference be between that and a charter school? Because isn't that what the charter schools started off as, was kind of like a group of people getting together?
Okay. Your charter schools are going to be state and federally funded.
Mm-hmm. But they started off as a group of homeschool people.
I don't know.
And then they got state
I
funding.
don't really know if it was a group of homeschool people, but it's basically in a community. You'll have people that will come in and say, we don't like how our schools are performing, and they may come together. They may have an investor. They may have a piece of property or whatever, and they will come together and they have to apply for a charter, receive a charter. They are state and federally funded. The difference between that and what I do is that when you become state and federally funded, you have to follow state and federal guidelines as to what you can teach, how you can teach it, what curriculum you can use, what grade level your kids are on. If your school does not perform at a certain ability, the charter can be removed. What we are as an independent private school, I answer to my parents.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome.
The state does not tell me what curriculum, what grade level. There's no one that comes in and says, you have to do it this way and use this curriculum. I answer to my parents. I'm the one in the classroom. I'm the one that teaches my kids. I know what is best for them. And so I don't answer to them. So it's a little bit different. Whereas with your charter schools, they actually can have their school removed from them if they do not meet certain standards. Their charter can be revoked.
That's
Okay.
right.
Wow.
Yep.
You know,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
It's growing.
yeah.
And how many students do you have?
I have 41.
Okay.
I have 41 students, which is technically one over what I'm supposed to have. I'm actually only supposed to have 40. And then for this school year, which we just started, and then for 24-25, my high school is already full. So I will only have space. I will only have space in junior high. My high school is full this year and next year. I'm graduating 12 seniors this year.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
12
That's-
seniors.
Well, you have
That's
like
amazing.
a graduation ceremony
Yes.
and cap and gown and the
Yes.
whole.
I usually always do photography for it. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Ian is my photographer. We
Oh, great.
have a full cap and gown graduation ceremony. Our students graduate with an independent private school diploma that is recognized by the state of Louisiana. I have students that have graduated that are in the Air Force, that are in the Army, that are in the Navy. I have them at different colleges out of state. Northwestern Carolina University had received one of our students who has graduated with 3 degrees and now is in grad school. And then I've had them at LSU. I've had them at Southeastern. The bulk of our kids are those that are going to go to trade schools, vocational schools, into the workforce. But they're also the ones who fall between the cracks of the public school system. Dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, ADD, ADHD, anxiety disorders, social anxiety, and just those that don't function in mainstream education. We end up getting those because we are it's smaller. We can give them a little bit more of attention. We can work with their learning struggles. I hate to almost say disabilities because they're really not. They're just learning disadvantages. But like we have students that have like dyscalculia. These students will never be able to add a set of column numbers without a calculator.
Right.
They're just not going to do that. So we're able to make some of those concessions. Our school was founded on a quote by Aristotle. Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. And what we've realized is that if we can come in and we can get to a child and we can say and have them believe, because I believe there's a direct correlation between what your heart believes and what your head receives. So if your heart is defeated and you're like, I can't do that, I'm too dumb, I'm too this, I'm too that, then your mind is closed off. Once we open their heart and say, look, we believe you can do it. Might take you a little bit longer. You might have to do it a little bit differently. But once we see that confidence, I've seen kids go from straight Fs to A, B honor roll, just simply by giving them that opportunity to come in and say, you're unique, you're different, you don't learn like everybody else. So let's find out how you learn. So we kind of do that and just really believing that a child is more than just a statistic in a classroom. They are a person who has the same feelings, the same emotions, the same issues that adults have. They just don't know how to function in those emotions. And our job is to teach them, hey, this is what we do. When you graduate high school, you're going to have this issue. You're going to have this issue. And teaching them how to function. Of course, you have teenagers. Not everybody likes everybody. You have kids that are like, they want to say things and they want to do things. And we're like, look, here's the deal. When you get in the workforce, you're not going to like everybody you work with. I'm just sorry. It's just not going to happen. You are just not going to like everybody on your job.
Right.
But you have to respect them and you have to learn how to leave them alone. If you don't like them, leave them alone. And we teach that in the classroom, And so it's more than just textbook education. It's life skills, prepping them for that real world.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Because that's something that's not happening today at all.
No.
When I was in high school, we still had stone tablets. But when I was in high school, you had to learn home ec. You had to learn banking, how to balance checkbooks, life skills. There was a little store that you had things, but you also had some things that are dying in the schools today, and that is, what do you think we did the first day of school in woodshop?
Birdhouse. I don't know.
Nope.
What'd you do?
Safety.
Give a guess.
Talk about life.
Okay. Give a guess.
Oh,
First day in wood shop.
Different kinds of wood. Safety.
We
Something.
built the principal and the assistant principal
paddle.
their
A paddle.
paddles
Oh, no way.
with their wood holes in it,
Yes.
Stop it.
and wood burned it with their name and the date, and then
Yeah.
finished it really
Yeah.
nice, and then presented it to them, hoping that since we made it for them, they wouldn't hit us as
They
hard
wouldn't use
with
it
it.
on you.
What
Yeah.
What do you think has caused, though? In you're talking about in woodcrafts, that you made a paddle. What has happened with society where this kind of thing that once happened does not happen anymore.
Well, and we talked about this in a past episode with Chief Murphy Paul with the Baton Rouge City Police Department. He came in and talked about the 3 F's, faith, family, first. We've lost the faith in the school. We've lost the family because it starts in the family. And now in American society, we are expecting the teachers to raise our kids, and they can't discipline them. And we are expecting the police to raise our kids, and they can't do anything to them. But it starts in the home. So what you're doing is you're expecting teachers and police officers and other people to raise your kids when you couldn't do it. And you didn't teach them these boundaries. You didn't teach them to respect people. You didn't teach them this. You didn't teach them that, and then expect other people to deal with it. And then on top of all of that, because the public school system is not teaching to teach, they're teaching to pass a test, where it sounds like Miss Terri here is actually teaching kids life skills that once you leave me, you have some skills that you can rely on.
And we do. We teach that. We have, in order for them to graduate, they have to get their transcript. We have 3 tracks that we have. We have your basic track where they take just the standard classes, algebra, geometry, and every single one of my students' required class is financial math before they graduate.
Oh, wow. That's
They
brilliant.
generally, the basic thing is what we call an integrated math, which is kind of like an intro to algebra. That's 9th grade. 10th grade is algebra. 11th grade is geometry. 12th grade is financial math. I do not require Algebra 2 and advanced math and trigonometry and calculus unless I have a child that knows immediately they're going into a 4-year university. We offer Algebra 2 and advanced math.
Okay.
I'm not going to force my kids to take a bunch of classes that they're not going to need. We don't do chemistry. We don't do physics. They do biology. They do anatomy. They do earth science. They do environmental science.
They do practical stuff, something they
Stuff
can
that you're
really
gonna use day in, day out.
Right.
And then our Englishes are American literature, British literature, world literature, and then a composition class where we teach them how to write essays and grammatics and all of that. So, and then our histories, American history, world history, geography, and civics. Just your basic, what they have to have according to the state standards.
So when you're teaching these kids how to write essays, are they doing that on the computer
No.
or are they doing that on paper?
We do nothing on computer.
Oh, wow.
We
Okay.
do. When they do the essay, the essay does have to be typed.
Sure.
So, but as far as saying, oh, well, we're going to do all of our work online, especially since COVID happened, everybody switched to an online version. We don't do that. We have, and I can't tell you how many times at my orientation, my parents came in and went, oh, textbooks, because we have.
I remember those.
Yes.
We have textbooks. And so, but on top of those core classes, English language, English, math, history, and science, we require 8 electives. So, and
What would your top 5 electives be? What do
we
you
rotate.
offer?
Well, we have a 4-year rotation, and so
Okay.
what our 4-year rotation ensures that is if a kid starts with us at 9th grade and they rotate through all 4 years of high school, we never repeat the same class.
Wow.
So we do life skills, we do speech, we do intro to psychology, and we do fine arts survey for 4 of them. And then the other 4 are Bible classes, New Testament survey, Old Testament survey, the life of Christ, and then whichever one I want to throw in there, because that's the class that I have another teacher that teaches with me, and we alternate back and forth. I teach all the Bible classes because that's what my degree is in.
Okay.
I have my associates is in biblical theology and my bachelor's is in education. So I teach all of the Bible classes. But we have some kids that say, hey, I'm not going to take the Bible class because they have taken an outside elective. We have one that does a lot with a youth writers program. So he gets an equestrian credit because he deals with horses. So we give him an equestrian credit. I have another one that takes jujitsu. That's physical education. I have another one that takes dance, and so that is a fine arts visual dance credit. My own son,
Hello?
yes, and your brother,
Right.
Eric, they actually were on a set of a movie, and they spent 2 weeks on that movie. So we gave them introduction to film as a credit. So when it comes to electives, depending on what your child likes, if they're sitting in a classroom and they're doing that work, we can give them elective that's more geared to them. And but the set electives that we have, everybody has to take those.
Okay.
And they're just basic speech, public speaking, life skills, psychology, and fine arts survey, fine arts survey is talking about your paintings, your music, your theater, just kind of the whole fine arts. We do that because we want a well-rounded student. But we do engage, and we do consider other electives that they might bring in. So if they're doing something that they're interested in, we might be able to use that as a credit. So when they graduate, they have 27 credit, or they have 24 credits. We offer at our school, which is not something that our particular state does, but we offer an advanced diploma. So in order for you to get our advanced diploma from our school, which just gives you a little bit of clout when you go to college, they have to take 3 extra credits on top of that. So they have to have 27 credits. They have to take an Algebra 2, and they have to have a visual art just to do that little extra. And they can graduate with what we call an advanced diploma, which, just a little plug, this year is my first year that I'm actually having advanced diploma graduates.
Oh, okay.
Lovely.
So
Great.
have 12 of my seniors, and there's a couple of these seniors that I've had for 6 and 7 years.
Wow.
They've been at my school for about 6 or 7 years.
Any foreign language?
Ironically, in the state that we are in, the only time that you're going to have to mandate a foreign language is if they are going to graduate from high school and immediately go into a 4-year university.
Gotcha.
If they're going to do BRCC, which is, a community college,
Right.
if they're going to do a community colleges don't require that foreign language, so we don't push them to have that unless they're going to go to a 4-year university. Now, if they want to take a foreign language on their own, then yes, we can put that on their transcript. But that's what I say when we cater to the needs of the kids and the parents and what they want, unlike most of your public schools who say, you're in 9th grade, you have to take this class. Now, what's a little bit different, there are 33 kids in my high school. My poor little junior high kids, I only have about 8 of those. But everybody in my high school takes the same class unless it's math. So, for example, this year they're doing world literature. Everybody in the class, 9th through 12th grade, takes world literature.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Because when you're literally looking at that, does it really matter what grade you took it in as long as it's on your transcript? I mean, like biology. Does it really matter if you took biology in the 10th grade as long as you take it in the 4 years that you're in high school?
No, it shouldn't matter when.
No. So that's what we do. We make all of the high, except for math. Now, math is that stair step, which is what I teach. A little prayer would be really beneficial right about now, because this year I'm teaching 7 high school math classes.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I'm teaching advanced math, Algebra 2, Intro to Algebra, Geometry, Financial Math, and Math Concepts, and I think there's another one I think I forgot.
Right.
But, so math is a stair step, so everybody takes one before they take the other.
Right.
But we also offer a remedial side for those kids that struggle. So if I have a few kids that just can't they're not going to be able to do geometry and algebra because they can't remember the formulas. So we do what's called an essential math step, math pathways, math concepts, essential math, financial math. And so, so we try to gear it for what that child needs, so.
Just to kind of hype up my mom a little bit too, it's like she's very, she's a great motherly figure and is very loving and is very, and that has been something that I've experienced in my life from the very beginning. But that is one thing that I feel like also persists in her business as well. Is that is, I mean, it's just it goes back to the quote that she said about educating the heart as well. It feels so much like that it's not just. She's not just here for a job. It's not just here just to, graduate kids or for numbers. Like there is this intrinsic motherly aspect that I think permeates through all of it, and it's very evident in how much she cares. So that's just one thing
They are my babies.
Well,
right.
Well, as always,
here we go.
I have statistics
Here we go.
on homeschooling.
Bring them on.
We're going down that path.
We're going there. Let's go.
This is an article I found. It was published, dated July 12th of this year, so it's fairly recent. Some statistics on homeschooling. There are about 3.7 million homeschool students in the United States.
Wow.
The 3 states with the highest homeschoolers: North Carolina, Florida, and Georgia.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
The top reason for homeschooling is a concern about school environment. Homeschool students outperform institutional school students academically.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
The highest homeschooling rate is among students with a grade equivalent of 6 to 8.
Junior high. Junior high is now, and let me say this, just to kind of give y'all a background. The school that I have, we are this year when my kids graduate in 2024 will be my 20-year anniversary of my first graduating class.
Oh, wow.
So it's been 20 years
Gosh.
since those first two students.
That's crazy.
It's been 20 years.
Was Ian your first student?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I had a couple before. I had some before him. Ian actually was not even in my second class. So
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I graduated in 2012.
yes, and I actually started. The school started, just to kind of give you an idea. The school started in 2001.
Yeah.
So, but
crazy.
with that being said, over the course of the 20 plus years that I've been doing this, there are two things. Junior high, by far, is where I see a lot of parents who pull their kids out.
That's, you're getting into that age
Right.
group.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, if they make it through junior high, and they make it into high school, the next big gap you're going to see is around 9th or 10th grade, when the kids are like becoming overwhelmed, they're sinking, and they're losing those credits
Right.
because you have to have so many credits to graduate. And every time you lose a credit, you got to retake that class. It adds more time. So that statistic is not surprising, because junior high is where you're going to see a lot of those kids pull out.
Especially before high school, too.
Yes.
So
48% of homeschooling households have 3 or more children.
wow.
The average
That would check.
three,
That was
yeah,
us.
we had
the
three
average
kids.
the average cost of homeschooling is $700 to $1,800 per student annually.
Wow.
1 in 3 homeschooling households has an annual income of over $100,000.
That's a lie.
Uh-oh.
I homeschooled all 3 of you boys, and I can assure you that was not our annual income when we did it.
And the last but not least, which I think would raise a lot of eyebrows here, homeschooling saves about $56 billion of taxpayer money annually.
Wow.
What you have to understand is that, and I don't think you realize that, when you have, and I see this every day, when you have a kid that pulls out of the public school system, that public school system has to account for where that child goes due to federal and state funding.
Yep.
And so if they don't know where that child goes, they get penalized for that. So in essence, what you're saying is that children are, I don't want to offend anybody,
Right.
but children are a dollar sign.
That's it. Absolutely.
They're a dollar sign. And it's like, okay, because I get phone calls all the time. We're calling about this student. Do you have Sally at your school? And it's like, they want me to send them this, a thing saying, yes, they are here, because if not, they're going to get penalized for that. So yeah, they do. Yeah. They're going to.
Sad to hear, but true.
Yeah.
Kind of following up on what you had just said when I mentioned the 6 to 8.
Right.
Is actually since 2012 that has now shifted from 9 to 12.
Wow.
So
you
there's
go.
now it's an older. It's happening now as the kids get a little older.
Well, it is, because here's what I'm finding is that we put kids, and I don't know where it is across, for your listener base. I don't know what theirs. I can speak for the state that we're in, because that's what I deal with.
Right.
So what they do is they put these kids in, what I'm being told by my students, they put them in and they tell them at 9th grade, you have to pick a track of what you're going to do for the rest of your life. I'm sorry, but I didn't know what I was going to do when I was in 9th grade.
Right.
I mean, I was just trying to figure out how to dress myself so I didn't look like a mess when I walked out the house. And you want me to pick a career path for the rest of my life. And then once you get down that career path, then you get into, not performing well in your classes or changing your mind.
Well, I want to add to that, because in some of the research I did, there's this huge thing about how controlled schooling came up. And in 1902, J.D. Rockefeller creates the General Education Board at the ultimate cost of $129 million. The Education Board provided major funding for schools across the nation and was very influential in shaping the current school system.
Right.
Now, there's a reason that is so interesting to me. The biggest quote that I could find on this by J.D. Rockefeller was, "I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers."
Why is that? Because that was built during the Industrial Revolution.
That's who he was. He
Yes.
was the Industrial Revolution.
He
He
was.
was the manufacturers. He owned
Right.
farms. He owned all of this. And he didn't want
yeah.
smart people.
No, he wanted people that
stupid
could say, "You sit here or you stand here, you do this job, you don't say anything." Which is what we've created a situation where we have kids that sit in there and they do what they're told. There's no creativity, but the school was created during that industrial
Right.
revolution.
For this reason, apparently.
Right. Going back to what was said earlier, though, is the grades 9 through 12. What I also believe is a major issue for that 9 through 12 that I'm seeing is that we're having more and more kids that are having social anxieties. We're discovering dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, these learning issues. But social anxiety is a big thing. And I'm going to tell you, just from an educating perspective, I'm going to tell you what I think the issue is: the internet.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Let me tell you the two
Absolutely.
things.
we have talked about that on
Let me
this
tell
show.
you, I don't know who created Snappy Chat, but I cannot stand it. I
It's-
cannot.
there has been a major negative consequence to
I see it in my kids every day.
what we've kind of created now, and there's no putting it back. It's where it's at.
But you do get that. I think the anxiety is a big issue that's hitting that high school level, and then so it's
Well, it used to
But the
be
bullying.
in school.
bully.
That's
yeah.
exactly where I was fixing to go with this. Back in my day, depending on what shoes you wore,
Oh, gosh.
or things like that, and now everybody's in uniforms, which I completely agree with. I completely agree with the uniform thing because
We don't do uniforms.
Y'all don't do uniforms,
No,
and
we
I
do not.
understand that.
We do not do uniforms.
But you also have a little bit more control of your students.
I
too.
do. I
Okay,
do.
but it was also when I went to high school, and this tells you how old I am. You had a shotgun and a rifle on your back window, and you got out of the truck. You closed the truck door, and then you reached in and locked it from an open window because things were different back then. And because of the advent of the internet
Right.
and social media and things like that, we're causing a problem. We're teaching our kids to compare our lives instead of just being thankful for what they have.
Well, the funny thing is, and I don't know if Ian will remember this. I don't know if you were still in school when this happened. Because we take our kids on field trips. We do 2 field trips a year
cool.
at least. We do 2 field trips a year. We have a homecoming dance in October. I have an honor society. I have a student government.
Wow.
So we have all this. But we took a field trip. Were you in school that time whenever we told the kids that you can't have pocket knives in a federal building and they had to empty out all the pocket knives? Do you remember that story?
I do.
You do. Yeah. So we get there and they say,
We live in the South, and so
Yes.
obviously there's a lot of good old boys around here.
Well, rule
and
number one is
everyone-
never go anywhere without a knife.
Well,
That's rule number
The
one.
thing is, for me, is like even though I wouldn't consider myself like a country boy, or that's part of my everyday carry is I have like my keys, my wallet, my phone, and my pocket knife. Is like it just because there's been so many times like for utility reasons alone that I've needed a pocket knife or something, and that is very much something that field trip we like, and none of us realize it until we walk in, and then of course every one of the boys had a pocket knife on them.
The
and that was
the security guard comes out and he says, "Okay, well, we're going to have to go through this detector, so you need to, no pocket knives or whatever." So I had one mom who opens up her purse and says, "Okay," and when I tell you, it was like click, 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 and she's walking and it's going clank, 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 because she had an entire purse full of pocket knives because every boy had at least one, if not 2. Some of them had 3 because they had one on their belt, one in their left pocket, one in their right pocket, and I'm thinking, Lord have
Well,
mercy.
the rule goes like this: you
Yeah.
have your main carry weapon,
Yes.
and you have a backup weapon. Then you
Right.
have 2 magazines for your main carry, and then you have 1 magazine for your backup. But then you also have your pocket knife.
Right.
Right.
Then you have a backup knife to your pocket knife, and then you have 2 more magazines as backup to your regular.
Well, you know, speaking of the gun thing, though, can we touch on the fact that some parents are probably not wanting their kids in public school because of like mass shootings?
Oh, I can
And things
tell you,
like
there's
that.
probably a lot of fear with that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot, and I think with we touched on bullying. I just think there are a lot of social negatives right now in public schools that some parents, if they have the means, are exercising. Look, I don't, especially when the stats show that actually these kids actually come out better than these that go through regular
having
schools. So, speaking of, what is kind of the gender breakdown in your school? I mean, is it more boys, more girls, or is it about split evenly?
Right now, in my junior high, there are 8 students in my junior high, 2 girls. The rest are boys.
And the reason I say, because I saw this, they talked about boys, and some of the issues that attributed to boys, but they said that something that boys' energetic natures and to physical expression can be more easily accommodated in a homeschool environment versus a traditional.
Oh yes, because we
kind of
we
canned,
had we had this one
educational.
student. He literally, God love him, he could not answer a question unless he was standing up, and he had to stand up and he had to fidget. But this child he was one of my students who went from making straight Fs to making AB honor roll. He was student government president. He was in the honor society. He did really, really well. And he was one that if he was going to be in class and participate, he had to be standing up. He had to be moving all the time. And I was like, I don't answer my question, do my work. I don't care.
Especially if you answer it correctly.
Stand on your head. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just get the knowledge.
And boys are 2.5
Yes.
times more likely than girls in public schools to be diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Yes.
I wonder if that's really true, or is that just simply the nature of the genetics of men and women? I mean,
Yeah.
I have a question. Do you teach cursive?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
In fact, in my classroom, I don't make them write everything in cursive, but what we tell them is this. When you turn in a paper, you have to write your name on your paper in cursive. I said, even if you don't learn how to do anything else in cursive, you have to have a signature.
Yep.
You have to sign a legal document. So I'm not going to sit here and force you to write your answers in cursive, but before they leave my school, they will have a signature so that when they leave, they can sign a legal document with their legal signature.
Okay.
It's good.
So to say that, do we teach cursive? We don't, per se teach an entire class on it, but we do focus on the fact that as a viable citizen, you have to be able to do something other than print your name on a legal document. So we make them, and if they turn in their paper and it's printed and not in cursive, they get at least 1, if not 2 points taken off their paper for not having their name written in cursive. So
I remember practicing my signature
Yes.
multiple times, having like a little sheet of paper that I just had that I was like trying to get it down the way I
Yes.
wanted it to.
yeah, I made
love it.
made all of my boys do that. But I kind of fell into this because saying I had 3 boys, and my intent on homeschooling them was nothing more than the fact that I was just a very selfish parent in that my children were little and they still had cartoons on their underwear, and I did not want to send them to somebody else for them to spend that much time with somebody else because they were my kids. I was very selfish. I wanted my kids with me. And so I started homeschooling them, and now in retrospect, I look at my middle son, Eric, God love him. That boy would have never made it you want to talk about some ADD? I am sure I never had the boy diagnosed, but I almost would bet that he probably had it. That boy was social. Ooh, he was so social.
I do. I think our listeners want to know, do you still have the cartoon underwear, Ian?
I do not.
No,
do
he
not?
does
Okay.
not.
No. But I will tell you though,
Technically-
Batman was my guy.
Okay.
Technically, I probably have them in a
Probably. Wouldn't be surprised.
That's
years and
mama.
years
Yeah.
later,
That's mama.
I had a brother and a sister, and what we did was on the kitchen bar, we had 3 stools, and they were old barrels, and my mom refinished them, and we learned later in life that's where she was putting all of our stuff.
Wow.
And there was 3 little macrame initials. And that's what happened. Every day, Mom would come move them down, and there was
That's
a
right.
list of chores underneath those. When you were on the right-hand far end, you got to sit up front
Okay.
in the car,
Wow.
and you had the least amount of chores.
Yes.
But the other 2 had, because we were always fighting about who was going to sit up front and everything,
Yes.
and who was going to do this chore.
That's a nice way of doing
Mom
it.
made it real easy. But we found out later in life that she was putting all of our stuff in those barrels.
Wow.
And I still have
Yeah.
my barrel. It had my first haircut. It had it. So maybe you're going to get one.
I
Maybe-
mean, I think I already
Actually,
have some
I
of it.
don't have barrels. I have.
Right.
They have those foot lockers at Walmart.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm really bad because each of my kids, I think, have 2 foot lockers.
Oh,
apiece.
yeah.
Wow.
A whole
I
bunch of
remember
stuff.
my mom gave
Here's-
me all that stuff.
Here's a little bit of. Did y'all know that Ian is a black belt in Taekwondo?
yes.
I still.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
He does. He has a black belt in Taekwondo.
Before
I have his black belt.
before
still.
I ventured off into the music scene. Like there was a point in time between what was I 7 when I started 6 or 7.
You were 6 or 7,
I-
and you
I
got your
did it-
black belt at 10.
Yeah. So I basically did it for. I want to say I got braces around 13. So I think I did karate until I got my black belt at 10 years old, and then I felt like I accomplished it. So I wasn't super
Ian
engaged
is a
into it.
very goal oriented.
Yeah.
So his goal in going into Taekwondo was to get his black belt, and once he got that, he was like,
He was
"Peace
done.
out, I'm done.
Yeah.
Let's
And then-
move on to bigger and better things."
And then I got braces, and then around that time was when I needed like special mouth guard and stuff, and I already wasn't super into, into Taekwondo anymore, and
Yeah.
so I then picked up the guitar, and then
Which brings
I've been
us
ever since then.
running back to this whole thing with homeschool. One of the big issues when I was teaching, when I started out with my boys, was the fact of I used to always get, you really should put them in public school because they need to be socialized.
Yeah, that's right.
Socialization.
Well, I was going to
I've
touch
heard
on
that.
that. With 40 students, you can still socialize these kids.
I socialized even when I just had my 3 because my and Ian can tell you because they were always on the go doing something. My argument on that is, since when did it become the public school system's job to socialize my kids?
Right.
Yes.
I don't know that I want the public school system telling me who my kids can hang out with and what
Especially
they can do.
now that it's just a tool for political indoctrination
And
now.
so, but my kids were very social. In fact, I mean, I'll just say my kids actually did better socializing with adults.
Right.
Yeah.
They were able to. They would go into grocery stores and they would find the little grandma, and my boys would walk around Walmart and help this woman they did not even know shop for her food. But yes, we do have, with having 41 kids there, and those kids are not they're not mine. Biologically, they're still my kids, but I call them my babies and my kids. But we take 2 field trips a year. We have honor society functions. We have 5 of those a year. We have our big shindig is homecoming, where we have a homecoming king, homecoming queen, homecoming court. We have a 3-hour dance. Parents. Now, let me just say a minute. My parents are the greatest ones. They are great. They bring a spread of food for my kids to eat at homecoming. So the kids, they eat, they dance, they stay. My parents stay at homecoming. We have a designated area for the parents. But so I have very active parents who want the best for their child. They want the best education. They know they can't educate them, but they want that environment. So we work together. And I tell my kids, I said, look, from 8 to 1:30, which my hours, we go to school Monday through Thursday. We do not go to school on Friday. We're off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We go from 8 to 1:30 Monday through Thursday. And we do back-to-back classes. They're hour classes. But I tell them, I said, from 8 to 1:30, you're mine. You are my child. That means if anybody shows up here to mess with you, I'm going to stand in front of you just like I was your own mama. They're not. And my kids know that. They know that my nickname I don't know if I should say my nickname.
I think you have to.
I
now.
want to know it now. You put it out there.
Yeah.
My nickname in the junior high, which has now progressed into the high school, is Scary Terri.
Oh no.
Scary Terry.
Yes,
Right.
because I could be very.
Save that.
I could be very.
Save that.
mean in the
We
classroom.
need that on one of the little buttons. Scary
So-
You
Terry.
drop the ruler down?
I am very much a disciplinarian in my classroom.
That's great.
Right.
We do not have fight. My kids don't fight. Now we have little tiffs, but because they're with each other 5 hour, 4 days a week, 5 hours a day, they're going to get on each other's nerves. But to have the fist fights,
and there's
we
always
don't
that
have
one. There's always that one kid, that either has, like with any school or any group, there's always a kid that is probably going through something and takes out other people, and then of course you have to be,
Yes.
there's got to be some talking to.
And
So
see, and we literally take them out on the porch, and we call it our come to Jesus porch. So it's like we're gonna come to Jesus on the porch, and then we're
Right.
gonna
We're gonna
and
hash
we
out
tell
like
them
adults.
we're gonna come on the porch. And this is where I develop some respect. I tell my kids, I bring my kids on the porch and I say, we're on the porch. You can say whatever you want to say on this porch. You can tell me however you want to feel. You want to cuss, you can cuss. I don't care what you say on this porch. Get it out on this porch. What is said here stays here. And then we're going to go back in the classroom and we're going to finish out our day and we're going to let it go. No repercussions, no punishment. You vent everything you need to vent right here. We're going to talk about it, then we're going to let it go, and we're going to move in. And so, so it builds that, giving them a safe place where they can throw up those emotions and know that they're not going to get in trouble for it, and it's okay. It's okay for you to feel a certain way. And so,
also just give them like respect and decency, like any other person. It's like,
Yes.
everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to, everyone probably has something to say, and
Right.
to give a person, like to give kids that are developing and going through probably emotions and hormones and everything else, or home life or whatever it may
Right.
be, to give them a place where it's like, with indirectly telling them like, I respect you, and like you have a place to talk, even though you may be wrong, and we'll probably, but like I think that probably means a lot in those moments because I know it did for me, like because I felt like I had that, and I feel like that is something that carried over into my adult life of like the same. I think you indirectly taught me a lot about how to communicate with people and how to teach people, whether they're adults, older than me, far older than me, or younger than me, being able to talk to somebody instead of talking at them and talking with them. And that's been a really big thing. So
I have a question.
yes, sir.
One of the things in today's school system is called Common Core.
Oh,
I've heard a lot about people
And-
talking about Common Core.
And I would like your input on that. Obviously, from the look on your face, this is not something we teach at your
pleasant
school.
thing.
What are your feelings on this Common Core bullshit? And I'll go ahead and say it.
okay. Ooh.
Do you need a minute?
That's
Okay.
a lot to it.
There's a lot to it. Yeah.
The problem that I have is this. Supposedly, Common Core was created to be a common standard across the United States. So if you had a child that went from Mississippi to Texas and they were in the 4th grade, they would be in the same thing in Mississippi that they are in Texas in the 4th grade. It's supposed to be a common standard.
I thought multiplication table and long
Okay,
division
but
was
here's-
common stuff.
Well, but here's the problem. So like if you go in, like say you're in a certain state and this class may be learning their 2's times tables and you take this child out and you put them over here in this other state. Well, this other state may be more advanced and they're not doing multiplication, they're
Right.
doing division.
Okay.
So when you do Common Core, supposedly it was supposed to be a standard that was created so that across the states it would be. But here's what I know.
Uh-oh.
When I get kids that come to me having to deal with Common Core, they cannot add simple 2-digit number, 24 plus 36. They can't do it unless they draw a diagram.
Yeah, I saw that.
Or boxes. I heard there was boxes.
It's ridiculous. Yes,
I was
it's
like,
ridiculous.
how-
Whatever kind of diagram you want, it's ridiculous. They have a hard time. And then here's what's really hard is then you get these kids who are supposed to go home and they have homework, which we don't do a lot of homework, but they have this homework. They take it home. Their parents can't help them because guess what? They were taught like us, 2 + 2 is 4. Here's 2 fingers. Here's 2 fingers. They equal 4. I mean,
Right.
We didn't have to draw
Or
pictures
the-
and diagrams and boxes.
Or the only thing I remember is just drawing out the numbers, the line.
But
and
what?
just doing
But
it.
that's what I'm saying. What made them change that? That's what I'm trying to understand. I mean, there's got to be some academics sitting in some room saying, "Well, long division or adding numbers the way I learned how to."
I think politically, I think it's a political thing, and they're trying to make
this has nothing to do
stupid
with
people.
academics.
They want people you can control,
This
and they
is
want stupid
political,
people.
and this is
Yeah.
money. This
Absolutely.
is a way for the state to control once again to control what it's done. The reason why we are having a teacher shortage is because in the public school system you are tying a teacher's hands. Here's what I know. Most teachers that I know, they're not in it for the money because Lord knows teachers don't make any money. They're in it for the simple love of learning, that light bulb moment when a child goes, oh, I get it. That every day when that child comes in and you're teaching them something new and you're molding and creating that child. The problem is that we have now created these standards and these guidelines that these teachers who love teaching and are so creative with how they can educate are now being boxed in with Common Core, that they are losing all of their creativity. And they're saying it's just not worth it. Now, can I go on and toot my horn here for just a minute and say this? About 10 years ago, I duplicated myself. So I'm not the only school in our state that does this. There is one in another parish, 2 public school teachers who pulled out of the public school system and said, we just can't do it anymore. And they said, we want to start our own school. So I got in touch with them, and it was really funny because I saw their flyer, and the first couple of times I called them, I was wanting to call them and give them encouragement, going, hey, you can do this. Let me help you. I've been doing it for a while. She thought I was trying to sign my child up. She's like, well, and I was like, no, you don't understand. I don't want you to teach my child. I'm already doing this. So I kind of told them, this is what you do, and I work with them and kind of help them. Now they're in a totally different parish than we're in. And
for those of you outside Louisiana, county.
I'm sorry.
You don't have to.
And so they live in a different parish, and their numbers are kind of right up there with mine because we're seeing this. And these are teachers who are like, I'm done. Well, instead of just giving up on education, they created their own school. And I call them, there's like, I tell them all the time, I'm like, I'm such a proud mom.
Right.
But it's like our sister school. And so we kind of, help them get started.
Right.
So,
and it functions kind of the same way
it
yours
does.
does, where it's like,
it's different. They have they do their own thing. But what I've noticed is because they are public school system teachers, they kind of do things a certain way because that's what they're used to. Whereas I technically have never taught in the public school system. I got my degrees and all that, but I have strictly just homeschooled. And so it gives me, I'm not kind of boxed into having to do things a certain way. But
well, just for our listeners out there, I've got some stuff here regarding Common Core, but kind of what kicked that off was Goals 2000. George H.W. Bush kicked that whole thing off.
Really?
Yes. And then, of course, that followed up with the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and then No Child Left Behind. You've heard that one before. And then Obama followed up with Every Student Succeeds Act. And then the federal legislation was raised to the top. So just kind of some...
And then what we do is we end up with kids in college who can't read and write.
Well,
or we end up with kids that graduate from we're no kid left behind, so we're going to graduate them knowing that they don't have the knowledge and education they need.
I think from what I was able to pick up, it seemed like there was a shift from student against student, determine using that as a benchmark, and it went to this national standard type of approach with education. So I don't. I've heard nothing but problems with Common Core. I don't understand why this has continued this way, but according to the stats, homeschooling is growing every year.
Yes.
It is growing because what it's doing is it's giving parents the freedom to be able to find an alternative to what the public school system says, you have to do this. One of the major things that I tell my parents is this. I said, contrary to popular opinion, the public school system cannot tell you how to educate your child. In the state that we live in fact, a lot of parents don't know this, but the state law says in the state that we live in, your child technically does not have to be registered in school until the school year after their 7th birthday.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Now, they will tell you that, you need to put your child in pre-K, you need to put your child in kindergarten, but state law says the school year after they turn 7 is when you have to submit some form of documentation that they're being schooled. And then, so we have to understand that at the end of the day, the school system comes in and says they don't give you any option. They won't let you have any option on what curriculum is being taught. They're not going to have any option on what classroom, what classes your kids are going to. There's very minimal decisions as a parent that you can make where the public school system is concerned. And I think parents are like, this is my child. I know my child better than you do. And I know what's best for my child, and what you're doing is not it. And so they're looking for viable alternatives, especially when you get these child that have these issues, whether it be anxiety, or these other issues. They're trying to find a way to have their kids succeed and not be defeated. And I'm going to tell you, I've seen some kids that if they weren't bullied and it wasn't peer pressure and it wasn't their peers getting on them, some of the administrations and faculties really do something to some of these kids sometimes.
That's sad.
And I've seen that. And
Well, one of the
it's
things,
really sad.
even when I was in high school, junior high and high school, I had teachers that inspired me.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear kids talking like that anymore. We're not teaching our kids to respect teachers and police officers, and it starts in the home, number one.
Well,
but then, where is this? Are we so worried about passing a test that we're not inspiring people?
now they are.
That's my point. That's all
Now,
we're
don't
worried
get me
about.
wrong. I've used the same math curriculum that I used when I was teaching Ian when he was like from 3rd grade on. It's the same curriculum. It works really well for me, and I can teach it really well. And so I see that my kids get a test at the end of every 5 lessons. They'll take a math test at the end of every chapter. They do have a test. They're given a study guide, but to literally say, okay, we are going to spend weeks and months for this state test so that our numbers look good.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's ridiculous. Now, what we do, we have standardized testing in April. I give the Iowa test to my kids. It's an Iowa skill of basic of basic skills. But my kids don't study for it. It's like, and I tell my kids, they're like, Miss Terri, are we going to have a study guide for this? Or are you going to go over it? I'm like, no, either
this is a real assessment. We're going to really assess how you're doing. Yeah.
Either
that's
you know
awesome.
it or you don't. And so, they take the test. Now, we have a standard. And my seniors, they know that when they take the Iowa test, in order to be able to get that diploma from our school, your high school Iowa test has to be a 10.1. And you say, why a 10.1? Here's the deal. The Iowa test goes all the way up to a 13 plus, which is, ready for college. 10.1 is the basic standard for what we call the GED high set.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, because I have kids that have test anxiety. They'll get a test and they'll be like, they'll freak
out.
Ian,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Ian, my son right there, funny story. He took this Iowa test when he was in 4th grade.
Yeah.
And he got so anxious, he broke his pencil in 2.
I was timed, and that was
it
a
was
big
a- it was a
thing.
time test, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I have kids that have social anxiety, so I'm not going to force them. And then I have some kids, that just they just don't do well on standardized tests. So what I tell them, I said, look, I'm looking for a 10.1. I'm looking for a GED standard that says if you didn't come to me and you had to take a GED, you could pass it. Mm-hmm. Now, can I just say that, I have 12 seniors, and of my 12 seniors, there's at least 4, if not 5, that scored 13 plus across the board.
Wow.
That will not have, that are exempt from taking the test this year.
Right.
So
Well, I mean, once you get that's you can't
you can't get higher than a 13 plus. And if they
Right.
make a 13 plus in the 11th grade, then they don't have. And these are my seniors that are graduating this year, but they made a 13 plus in the 11th grade, which
Right.
exempts them from taking it their senior year. So they're going to get a 2-week spring break instead of one, because our standardized test is always right after or right before spring break.
Okay.
So it just makes it easier, because with 41 kids, I only bring in half the class. So instead of having all 40 kids, I'm going to bring in 20 of them and test those 20 and put 10 in each room. So it just makes more conducive for testing. So if they are exempt from the test, they get 2 weeks off for spring break, and they're like, yay.
What's that?
But,
That's great.
So we do that, but to base your entire school year on a
taking a
test.
test.
But see, once again, you're dealing with an institutionalized approach to education, and I don't think they have a choice. I
No, they
think
do
they
not.
don't. Yeah, you're lucky that you're able to have some control over your environment
Right.
in a public school setting. I grew up in I went to a parochial school in my K through 8. It was a very structured environment. I mean, I was taught by nuns.
Parochial. That's what I say. That's when you get
That's
smacked on the
Catholic,
hand with the
I mean,
nuns,
it
right?
It was
So-
a very structured environment. Then when I went to high school, I went to a public high school, which was a completely different
Yes.
environment.
Wild West.
It was, and so I can, I can see how things can get out of hand.
Yeah.
With kids now, and especially now, it's just, we talk about all these anxieties and stuff that's going on. Why do we have so much of that? Is it solely attributed to social media?
I wouldn't say solely, but probably a big factor.
Well, then what could be other factors?
Well, it's always been social. It's always been social. Social media was standing by the water fountains, hanging out behind the stadium. It's just changed how the information and how quickly the information goes from student to student. It's always been peer pressure.
I think education now has turned into, and you're hearing it a lot, especially a lot of parents are going to these school board meetings. A lot of the topics that are being introduced now in, I would consider, young ages, I think it's messing with people's minds.
Oh, I
mean,
100%
I just
agree.
do. I mean, I think they're sometimes discussing things probably they're a little too young to deal with.
Oh, of
I have
course.
I have a coworker of mine, and she has a kid that is 6, and she's like, he's asking questions that he's learning from school and stuff, and she's like, we shouldn't be having
No,
this kind of
exactly.
conversation
It's
at
6.
6 years old. She's like, that's not something we need to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well,
it's
it's 100%. I agree
Right,
with you,
right.
100%.
so
Albert Einstein has a quote, and I want to throw this to you, Miss Terry.
All right.
Never confuse education with intelligence.
Yes.
And we're at that point now in American public schools that we're not looking for intelligence. We're looking for people we can control and get to pass some tests. And we're not inspiring them anymore, which leads me to my favorite quote on the planet, if I may, if y'all will indulge me, by Chip Foose.
oh, here we go. I know this one.
Yes. The biggest crime happening in America is the fact that they pulled all the shop classes out of schools. Kids today dream isn't to build something, it's to buy something. Chip Foose.
Yes.
We're dropping cursive writing, we're dropping calligraphy, we're dropping music theory, we're dropping art history, we're dropping shop, we're dropping all of the inspirational classes that teach kids to find out who they are, what they can do, confidently do, and aspire to be something.
Right.
But we're forcing them to make decisions on what they want to do and not, as you said, finding their heart.
Well, and here's the thing, shameless plug. Daniel, who is my art teacher, I have an art class. We have it on Mondays and Wednesdays. And he teaches my high school kids, and he's a phenomenal artist. So they take it as an elective credit. We end up having an art show in our community where they come in and they judge it, and the kids get their prizes. They'll get $100 for first place, $50 for second, $25 for third, and they do art. Knowing that this is what I'm saying. why parents are choosing homeschool is because they are finding these they're saying, I have more flexibility to allow my child to be creative. I have one of my students, okay, my kids don't want to take my Bible class. They say, Miss Terri, it's a hard class. I just really don't want to take the class. And I tell them, I said, I'm not going to force you to do that, but you have to have an elective. If you don't have an elective, then you're going to have to take my Bible class. And so what it does is it teaches my kids to think outside of the box.
Sure.
What can I do that's going to give me an elective credit so I can get out of this?
Decision making.
Because then that means I'm going to get out of school early and I'm not going to have to take this class.
Having an opinion and making a decision.
I had one of my
That's amazing.
students,
That's brilliant.
His uncle owns an air conditioning and refrigeration company, like an AC. Is
HVAC company.
HVAC.
Okay. So what he did was he spent the entire summer working for his uncle, and his uncle is teaching him this trade, and he brought a document into me because I tell him you have to spend 180 hours on your elective through the course of 10
If he worked
months.
all summer, he got 180.
Right.
Yeah.
So a basic course has to be 180 hours, whether you break that up over a 10-month school period or whether you work full time. So he brought me this certificate, and I put an HVAC on his transcript. And so he got out of my Bible class. I had another one who said, Miss Terri, can I take boater safety? If I take a boater safety class, is that an elective? I said, do you have to listen to a lecture? Yes, ma'am. Do you have to take a test at the end? Yes, ma'am. I said, okay, well then it's an elective credit. If you got to listen through a lecture and take a test, then it's a credit. So he brings me the certificate in, and he's got boater safety on there. I've used hunter safety. I will use hunter safety because it's hunter and gun safety. Now, I will preface it by saying this. If you're going to a 4-year university,
Yeah, then we got.
I'm not using that.
Right.
These are for kids who are going to go into trade school, vocational school, community college, where they're not going to go, oh, well, you have to have X, Y, and Z on your transcript. They're just looking for a complete transcript.
Right.
So this is why I say, well, we're
Or even like a resume. I mean,
right. It's like so we're able to gear it for our kids. Now, if you're going to a 4-year university,
Right.
or let me say this, even if I have a child that's going into the military, I'm going to make them take.
They're going to need a little bit.
They're going to need a little bit more.
Right.
So you're not going to be able to get by with going, oh, let me take hunter
Right,
safety
right.
and let me
That's-
take boater
that's not gonna
safety,
get
and
it done.
that's not.
Yeah.
But this is where me knowing my kids
Right.
Yeah.
comes into
Right.
play. I know what my kids are going to do. I'm like, I know what's going to happen with them.
Every person is unique and different.
They
and-
are.
and they learn differently, and of course,
Okay,
so
I had 3 boys, and my 3 boys could not be any more different.
Mhm.
Even educationally, Ian struggled academically. It came difficult. Now, you give him something to take apart and put together. I mean, he was just
He's
phenomenal.
creative.
He's very creative. Could not stand to be in school. Could not stand the book work.
It was, and it always infuriated me because Eric is my middle brother, and he's 2 years younger than me, and I may have, like street smarts, like common sense kind of stuff. Eric is like intelligent, so like
He's
like test,
he's book smart. He's book
yeah,
smart.
so test taking, memorizing the material and stuff like that. It came like he could wake up from a nap and then like get a B or an A on a test, and I would have to like study hard. And I was like, boom, C. And I was like,
He's not one of those cats that could sleep on the book.
No,
and
I don't think
pass the
so.
test.
I don't
Well,
think so.
funny story is he wanted to get this particular scholarship that our school offers, our state offers, and in order to get that, you have to take an ACT. Well, you have to score a certain percentage on your ACT to be eligible for the scholarship. Okay, he had to score a 21 on the ACT to be able to get this scholarship. So I bought him a book, and I said, here's your book. Study this book. This is going to help you for your taking your ACT in the morning. He gets up, goes, takes the ACT, and I'm like, "Did you study?" He's like, "No." He gave me the book back. Never bent the spine, never cracked the book, and I'm like, "So help
gosh.
me
Yeah.
if your scores." He comes back. He had to have a 21. Without even studying, he scored a 22.
Wow.
I was like, just think if you'd have studied.
Yeah, I'm so envious of that.
That's what I'm saying.
I sympathize
Yeah.
with Ian
That's-
in
that's
that
Eric.
because
That's my
I
middle
knew
one, yeah.
people that didn't have to do anything, and they
Yeah.
they say, "Well, I love school." Well,
Right.
no wonder why you love
Yeah.
school. It's easy for you.
Exactly.
You're struggling.
It's a
You're not
walk in the park.
banging your head against
yeah.
the wall because they're like, "Why I'm not getting this?"
I've realized in my adult life that that there is I don't want to bog down the episode with it, but there's something called subvocalization, and it has to do with the voice in your head and how you perceive the voice in your head. I feel like is what it was described to me as. And so whenever I read, I subvocalize. So whenever I'm reading something, my voice is in my head, and it's like reading each individual word. Whereas people that are really quick at reading, they can just like glance at a line of words and it just clicks, and it is something. And I can do that, but I have to kind of like force myself to do it. And so when I was younger, I never understood why I was like never super great at reading, because I was just so slow at it, and it also like it bogged down my mind, and I felt like mentally kind of exhausted from it. And so I was never like super great at it. And in my adult life now, it's like
that's one of the things that brings us, back to the homeschooling thing, is because you have kids that are auditory. They learn better by hearing. Some learn better by seeing. Some learn better by doing. I literally had one of each of those in my boys. One that learned better by doing, one that learned better by hearing, one that learned better by seeing. When we're teaching, we try to incorporate. We will lecture our classes. So if we're teaching about World War II, we're going to lecture the class. We're going to talk about it amongst the kids and have the kids participate in the lecture and back and forth. We're going to give them something to write, like fill out, whatever it is, write something about it, right? But we're also going to put a documentary on the TV for them to see. So no matter which type of learner you are, you're going to get it from somewhere. And so I think that's part of the problem, is that, when you're in the public school system, this is what the kids have told me. They said, well, they just hand you a sheet of paper and say, here, do this, and don't say anything.
Right.
Well, we're not like that. We're going to lecture. We're going to do. We're going to watch. We're very engaged in what
utilizing
we're doing.
all the senses.
We are. We are. And so, that's...
Which is something school today does not do.
Well,
Right.
because they're too busy worried about the test.
Well, they've got too many. They worry about the test. They've got too many students per teacher ratio,
and there's huge issues.
So,
and in many public schools, there are a lot of challenges that I don't.
One of my very best friends
teach.
is a teacher. A couple years ago, she was even the state teacher. What is it? Top teacher, whatever.
Teacher of the year.
Teacher of the year. And she loves teaching her kids, and she tells me how much it's changed.
It has.
And what really bugs me about it is she's been teaching for a lot of years. She's still paying off her student loans.
Yeah, it's sad.
They don't make enough money. I can tell you over the years, just the amounts of money that she's put into her own classroom because they don't get everything they need.
No, they do not.
We need to change something. We need to change something. If we're going to continue to be competitive in this world, our education system has to change. We have to do something. And it sounds like you're kind of on the right track there. But we have to do something on a wide-scale mission of America to change our education system.
Now you're going into something that I had this very discussion last night. With an attorney friend of mine who him and I go back and forth because we are different politically. But we were talking about tuition and how much student debt that this country holds right now for people getting degrees that do not pay salaries that justify the cost. That is a huge topic right now.
Well, and then you look at your public school systems, they gear all of their academics to four-year universities.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Whereas I am seeing that most, if not all, most of my kids, I've had a few that have went straight into college, but not many. Most of my kids don't want to go out and do 4-year right out the bat because they're like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm not sure, and I don't want to go do a 4-year university and then change my major 3 times.
That's what the same thing. And so, I was like,
But we have lost the fact that you look at somebody that works in air conditioning and refrigeration, and in the state that we live in, how much money you think that man's going to be making?
Truckloads.
Okay. And he didn't go to 4 years of college. I mean, he went to trade school, vocational school, whatever it is, or he learned his trade, You know, we tend to forget that it's not, you don't, unless you're going to be a doctor
Right.
or, you know,
An
a lawyer
engineer.
or something like Hottie Doctor back here. I mean, you know, you don't really need a 4-year, you know, it's okay. We need to start making it okay to go to trade school, to go to vocational school, to go to community college. And not that there's this stigma on it. Oh, you're going to beauty school?
Right.
I'm going to tell you one thing. I hope somebody goes to beauty school because I need my hair cut every now and then.
Right.
I mean, you
Right.
know, so it's we don't need to stigmatize that. It's okay for you not to go to a 4-year university.
I agree,
Higher
100%.
ed has convinced the world that you're not a success in this world if
Right.
you do not go to college.
Yeah.
And look, I'm speaking of, I have a master's degree, so I am all about people wanting to go to school and do that. But I can tell you, in my own world, these degrees have not helped me one iota
Right.
in my current job.
Your experience.
At all.
Yeah, experience.
I know plenty of people in my current job that are occupying high places within the organization that have no college.
Right.
In
That-
my almost 30 years,
Right.
I've seen that.
There is a
So the idea of college being this magic thing that somehow opens up all these doors for you,
right.
you know,
To-
in certain professions, yes.
Oh, yeah, right. And
I mean,
but this is
a
also-
medical doctor, yeah, you need to have
Yes.
the
This,
school.
this is
yeah.
also something that I have a teeny tiny bit of experience in. With my new job that I got 5 years ago, I knew I wanted a bit more education. And so I was going to take some online classes. Hottie Doctor over there pushed me to go a little bit harder and try a little bit more higher than that. And I got accepted to Harvard Online.
Oh, wow.
But now that is not for a degree. It is a certificatable classes and learning experience that actually employers are looking at more now than they are a degree. So I have a couple of certificates now in some very specific fields
Right.
that these hiring companies are looking for, and because they're looking at somebody that back in the early day, we wanted to know that you could put 4 years into something,
Right.
show up,
Yeah.
learn something, and maybe that way you'll stay with the company for 20 to 30
Right.
years. But now in the world of the millennials and the X generation, you're looking for a new job every 2 years.
Well,
To-
you know, go ahead. I'm
I was
sorry.
gonna say to put things to make things tangible as to what you were talking about. I got hired on at a new job about a year ago as a specialist in a field, and I transferred to that job because of a specific salary amount that was offered, because this job required that, and I was like, I have a certain amount of money that I would like to make for this specialist position. And there were people on staff that had had a lot of schooling, and they were upset whenever through the grapevine they found out how much money I was making, and that they were getting paid more because of their very entry-level position, and me getting hired on as a specialist for this specific task that is something that not everyone can do. That I also, again, I've been working in this field for upwards of 8 years, so it feels like it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. That's what it feels like. I was circled around the right people, and I had the right opportunities come around. For all of a sudden now, it's like, yes, it feels like, oh, you were just. And I have no college experience. I have no degree in this field that I'm doing, but it is something that I've done for a long time. I'm passionate in it, and I have tried for years and years over the time to get better at it. So that way,
Right.
this opportunity that could present itself, I could say, no, I require this amount much because of how good I am at this kind of thing. And
Because
so-
at the
right.
end of the day, it's about experience. I tell our kids when we have kids that want to go into the medical field, they want to be nurses, they want to be whatever. I immediately tell them, I said, well, the first thing that you need to do is you need to go become an EMT. You need to go to school, become a nationally registered EMT, and work on an ambulance. Then while you're working on an ambulance, you can pursue your secondary education and pay for it. So maybe you won't have as many student loans, or you can pay it off. And then, if you don't want to be an EMT, be a paramedic. But then you're going to decide, because you're in the medical field, it's going to help you with your classes because you're getting hands-on experience. You're going to get to decide, hey, is this what I really want to do? And then you're a nationally registered medic, which means you can take that to any state.
Well, Ian falls into the category of, why am I paying you so much money? We talked about HVAC. We talked about Ian's profession, or an auto mechanic.
Right.
And, okay, you go to your auto mechanic, or you go to the HVAC guy. Well, why is it $2,000? You don't want to pay $2,000? Do it yourself.
That's it. You're paying for the experience.
You did it. You fixed it in an hour and a half. You're not paying me for the hour and a half. You're paying me for the 8 years that Ian took to learn this field and can knock it out. And
so
all of our listeners listen to this podcast know that Ian might have a little skill or two when it comes to putting on something professional. And a perfectionist.
I did not teach him that. That was not something that he learned at my homeschool, I can assure you.
Well, we love what he does here. We love what, and his skill set is there.
Yes.
What Jason does,
Yeah.
his skill set is there. What I used to do for many, many years in the private sector protective service industry, I didn't go to school for that.
Right.
I learned.
But then when you go to get a job, what is one of the things how much experience do you have?
Right.
They're not going to ask you how many degrees do you have. They're going to go, do you have experience? Because here's the deal. It's what I said. You can get all of that book learning, and this is what I tell my
translate.
kids. But when you go to a job, they're going to tell you, okay, forget everything you learned because I'm going to teach you how I want it done.
When I working at a coffee shop as a supervisor, being over inventory, being over like money management, being over people, like and also dealing with coffee in a high volume market. It's like that is all things that that I had to get pretty good at, and like you probably could have taught me all that. You probably could have you can sit down and give me a lecture about how hard it's going to be, or how stressful it's going to be, or how it is to work with people that are have a short fuse, or that are lazy, or whatever it may be. You can teach me all that stuff, but there was nothing I can tell you. There's nothing like being in the middle of it and going through all of it, and for me to now know that if I am met with a situation like that, I feel like I have the confidence to go, it's okay. I've been there. I've done that.
But when you're a hiring person, you have to look at this also.
Right.
Okay. I'm interviewing for a job.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just say we're within 2 years of graduating from school, high school or college. Okay. What do we want to hire and what do we not want to hire? Do we want to hire the student who got Fs? Probably not, right? Do we want to hire the student that got straight A's?
You're always going to go with
No, you don't want to hire the person with straight A's. Not in the entry level, not in the first couple of years, because that student that made the straight A's is smarter than you are, and they're not going to stay with you. You're going to want the C or the B students because they're moldable and changeable, and you have something to work with. But off the bat, hiring somebody that makes straight A's is not going to stay. Statistically, is not going to stay with you.
For the millennial generation, I don't know.
I'm talking about.
I don't think it matters A, B, or C.
If I'm sitting there looking at somebody, I'm not going to hire the straight A student.
I can tell you that the jobs that I've applied for have had nothing to do with my education at all. In fact, they've had more questions because I was homeschooled. Like interested questions.
We've had to prove ourselves.
Think about this. We've talked about the cats like your brother,
right?
Who can go and just pass a test without any effort.
Yeah.
What have they proven in life?
Well, no,
they've not proven anything. No, I would rather somebody who's had to work at it, who's had to push it, who's learned problem solving, who's learned how to get stuff done and make decisions based off of what they're dealt with in life. That's the cat I want to hire.
9 times out of 10 for me, being on a job interview, I have noticed, and I've learned this from also being a musician and like being in that atmosphere of like, you have to be confident and to be cool and collected is that the
What'd I
second
tell you?
the second that you're the
You
second
have
that-
to sell yourself.
Yeah, exactly. The second that you panic, or if all eyes are on you, the second that you look worried and frantic is the second that everyone else is like, "Oh my gosh, we should be scared." But if all the eyes are on me and I'm like, everything's gonna be all right, it's okay. Everyone's like, okay, cool, he's got this. If nothing else, I can rely on him. I'm scared, but he's got this. And I've noticed that, especially in an interview, if I can just keep calm. And for the stuff that I've interviewed for a lot of times, it's always been stuff that I'm very confident in. Like for the current job position that I'm in, I was like, I feel very confident in this position. So I know that I can come there and go, this is what I would like. I came to the table with my expectations and they were like, yeah, we could definitely do that. And I was like, perfect. So that's, but that just saying for me, I've never, my grades or if anything, the conversation's been like, oh, you're homeschooled. That's cool. So like, what did you do for the past, 4 years? And it's like, oh, I was, whatever. So
I think we need to get to a point where we normalize trade schools, vocational schools, careers, just like we normalize going to college.
Right.
It's okay.
That's-
I told
And right now it's easier. Those cats are making more money than the ones going to school.
and have very little debt.
Yeah.
And Ian will remember whenever my kids were young, I would tell them this. I'm like, I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
I don't care if you pick up trash for a living, as long as you are happy with what you do and you make a living for yourself and you're taking care of yourself. I don't care. I don't care what you do.
Right.
Make sure that it's something that you love, because here's the deal. At the end of the day, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
That's right.
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 You told me, I remember growing up, you specifically told me numerous times that as long as you're going to live in my house, either you're going to go to school or you're going to get a job.
That's right.
And so I graduated high school and I was like, I don't want to spend the money to go to college because I also don't know what I want to do. I was a struggling artist and I was, a teenager and was like, I want to play music and I want to be free from school because I hated going to school. I didn't like
The hardest 3 kids I've ever taught in my 20-some-odd years are my
Your
own
own
3.
kids?
Yeah, right. But so for me, like that was what my mom said. It's like you're graduating high school and you're either gonna go to college, and if you're gonna stay here at the house with me, you're gonna either go to college and at least better yourself in some way, because I don't want to have a bum bumming around. I was like, I don't want to be a bum. She's like, then go get a job. And I worked at a wholesale store stocking shelves. And I loved it. And
He
because
did
I was like,
love it,
oh.
but what the funny part about that is Ian has always been that kind where he's like, whatever.
Yeah.
He didn't want to take his driving test. Didn't want to get his driver's license. He was like, he didn't care. He was probably the only 16, 17-year-old boy who was like, I don't care about that. He gets this job at this place, and he's got to go from city to city to city. And I looked at him, and I said, bro, you're going to have to go get your driver's license, because I am not driving you from one end of the state to the other.
And I did. I think
And
I had a permit I got when I was 16, and I think I held onto that permit
until he was 18.
for 2 years until I was 18.
He got his
And then I
driver's
got my
license at
driver's
18.
I'm glad we're at this point of the episode right here, because I think I speak for Jason and myself and every other listener to the Retrospect podcast. Miss Terri, do you have any other interesting stories about Ian that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, now that we're wrapping it up.
This is the great time here. If you would like to share anything.
I have to say this, and I've listened to the podcast for a while. I've listened to it from the beginning, and I could not be more proud of my son. He's, that firstborn son, you don't really realize, I think,
Well, that's the one you make all the mistakes with,
oh,
right?
and this is what I said. I said, you know
Yeah.
what? Here's the fact that Ian is a functioning member of society is literally God's grace and mercy, because everything I learned wrong about what I'm doing right now, I learned on him.
Okay.
So,
just to kind of give a funny story about that as well, because I feel like it summarizes my luck with that sort of stuff, and as well, and with business. What was the terminology you said? You were you're an accredited private school. What is it?
I'm an independent private school.
Independent private school.
We are not. We are
Right.
not. There is no such thing as an accreditation for
Okay.
homeschool.
Right. So basically, but there was a process in which you basically had to graduate students with a GED.
There, when we initially started
Right.
in the state that we lived in, when we started, there was no acknowledgement of homeschool. So you could not give them a diploma.
Oh, wow.
They were forced to take a GED because that was the only way for them to be able to get a job or to do anything, is you had to have this GED. Back in 2010, and I'm not a very political person. I don't really like politics, but I will tell you one thing, Bobby Jindal will be my friend forever, because back in 2010, he passed this law that said that homeschooled students can receive diplomas that are acknowledged just like public school diplomas, as long as you submit them a certain way to the state. Like, you have to follow the paperwork process.
Yep.
So he actually in 2010 enabled us to be able to give our kids what we call an independent private school diploma. So now my kids graduate with a diploma and a transcript. Ian's class in 2012 was my first class that graduated with diplomas, because I used to have to stop my kids at the 10th grade and prep them for a GED.
Oh, wow.
So I never felt like I was really teaching them what I wanted to teach them, because I'd have to stop and say, okay, now I got to prepare you to take your GED because we have to give you something that the government will acknowledge.
But anyway, so I did up until that point, I was already like halfway through GED prep stuff. And so like I tried to take the GED, and of course I was never great at tests, especially timed tests. And so I failed the GED by, I mean, a point, basically.
Okay, well, let me clarify how that works, which I think they said, I personally would have set you up for failure. So at that time when you were taking the GED, you took sections, English, math, science, whatever. You had to score X amount of points per section. But then you had to have an overall average of a certain number. Well, the problem is if you scored what you needed to on every section, just barely, your average would not be good enough for you. So Ian was always missing that average. Now, he passed every section.
Yeah.
He passed every section, but he missed the average by 1 point.
So needless to say, I was very defeated, because I was like, I already don't. I know. And so
I was like, I could educate everybody else's kids, but I can't even do my own.
So I was very frustrated. But the funny thing was that because like I had passed all my classes in school.
You had a standardized test.
Right.
You had passed all your classes.
I was a pretty good BC student.
Yeah.
I did everything. Like I was good enough, but I just wasn't quite to that, whatever their standard was.
Your test anxiety. Yeah.
Needless to say, like there was that point whenever like that.
The email came through.
Well, yeah, that your school could now be like, could have some sort of diploma. She was like, you pass everything. Like on paper, you have all your extracurricular stuff. You have all the tests you pass. You're like,
he had enough credits. He had an iOS test score that was high enough. He had everything he needed for me to say, you're good. Except the state would not give him anything that said he graduated high school. So when that came in, I told Ian, he goes, I'm not going to take this test again. So I literally created.
I was like I said, talking about feeling defeated, I put so much work into it, and I
created
so
my
hard.
first transcript. Ian's transcript was the very first transcript I ever created. It looks a little rough. If I had to get him another one, I have to update that. But
So I think we all noticed that Ian did a great job in ricocheting that off of there. So we're not going to get any good stories about him.
It was
from
a story.
His mom.
It was a story. I mean,
we want some juicy stories here.
Let's see. I don't. I'm not really sure.
I was, like I said, I was a creative kid. I was pretty quiet, so I stuck to myself.
When he was little, he used to call elephants funnets.
Yeah, funnet.
He's like funnet. We took him to the zoo one time, and they had that elephant at the zoo that horn comes through.
The trunk.
The horn, the trunk. The trunk will come, and he thought it was really cool until that, because he was only about 2 or 3 years old, until that trunk got a little too close to him. And then he was like crawling up. He was like, "The funnet gets you. The funnet gets you." But so y'all want a really embarrassing story? Is that what y'all really want?
I think I speak for Jason and all the listeners. Yes,
I think for Ian, he was my first one. Hard-headed.
Oh yeah,
hard-headed.
Yeah.
So this is one of my favorites.
I think I know. I know which one you're exactly going to tell.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I don't know if your parents used to, but we grew up with that wooden spoon.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
And so when Ian was 2, he was 2 years old. I put him in the bathtub to give him a bath. And he was in there, and I said, "Okay, Ian, it's time to get out." And he goes, he looked at me and he said, "No." And I said, "We're getting out." I
Right.
said, I'm going to count to 3. I said, 1. He said, 2, fui. No. I went, so I'm going to get the wooden spoon. So I went and got this little wooden spoon. And I come in there, and of course, I'm that mom. I'm banging the door frame because I'm just trying to scare him. And I'm like, boom, boom, boom. And I said, I'm going to count to 3, and you better get out. He goes, 1, 2, fui. No. I had to yank that poor little baby. I whipped him all the way.
Yeah.
He was in his bed. He was going, that whipper. I was in the living room crying
You
because
were crying too.
I'm a horrible mother. But do you know, I never spanked that child again.
Uh-oh.
That was about the same time that he used to be a headbanger when he was a baby. He used to get mad if he didn't get his way. He'd bang his head on the floor.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So he would bang his head on the floor, and then, which we kind of let go for a little while until we realized that he was in the kitchen and he went to bang his head on the floor. And when he went down, he realized that if he crawled just a little bit, he'd be on the carpet. So I was like, so he crawled up there, started banging his head on the carpet. So he was, so, but he,
and Dad didn't like that. He was like, you ain't.
No.
Yeah,
you
because
gonna
he's
play
the
me
one.
like that.
So then he was the one that went and put ice water in a cup, and when he brought his head up, he slung that ice water in his face.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, he quit doing that real quick too. Ian's always been very determined, very hard headed. But
I'm gonna say I'm pretty sure Mallory would tell me that. I think I'm still pretty hard headed. So it's
But he did.
It's a flaw.
He would be like, I'd be like,
So-
it's time to get out the bed. No,
Right.
I'd be like, I'm gonna count to 3. 1, 2, 3, and I was like, are you
Well,
kidding me?
There you go.
I can say this.
Oh,
You should be proud of your son.
I am
He's
very.
done
he
well.
is a
I am
very,
very proud.
very good man.
I
I've
appreciate
enjoyed
that. Thank
knowing him
you.
over the years. I'm proud to call him a friend.
He is.
And you did a good
appreciate
job, Terry.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
did a
that.
good job.
He is my heart. You don't really quite know how much you need your first son until that first son is born. Now, I
Right.
love my other 2, but
Of course. But this is my podcast. So,
This is your
No, excuse me. Ours.
I know. I'm
But
just
no,
playing.
he is.
Boy,
I am.
talk
I
about a
appreciate that.
narcissist.
I'm playing.
I
I'm
take back
playing.
everything I just said.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
But to say,
he is my
also
heart,
to like I said it in the middle of the episode as well. It has been, I could have never asked for a better mom, and I have. There has been so many moments in my life where I feel like, as a kid and as like a young person, I feel like everyone goes through this, but you take what you have for granted. And
I was a bit mean when he was
no,
young.
no, you weren't mean. I think you were a good disciplinarian.
Very
and,
stern.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I also know that you instilled in me subconsciously that I would never need for anything, and that I know you would always be there for me. And that is one thing that I can say even now as an adult, almost 30 years old, that I know that my mom has always got my back. Is my number one fan, and I appreciate that. So,
Well, I appreciate that. I love you.
That's awesome.
I loved you
great.
right up until the time you said you were 30 years old.
Right. Well, I still got another year. I'm close.
I know.
But
And Terry, thank you for coming today
Yes.
and
I
shedding
appreciate
some
that. Thank
light
you, Mike.
on
Thank
the
you so much.
homeschooling thing, because parents really are out there. They're looking for, especially in today's society with the political
Yes.
agendas that the governments and school systems have, and you see
Right.
people being arrested at school board meetings because they don't have a voice anymore.
Yeah.
You're a great voice
Well, I
for the
appreciate that.
homeschooling system, and I hope our listeners
Well, if y'all
have
want me
learned
back,
something.
I'll come back anytime.
There
Talk
you
about
go.
homeschool.
Hey.
Yes.
I'm always up talking about
love
education.
it. I love it.
This is fantastic, and we appreciate you.
appreciate
I've
it.
known
Thank
you.
you for
I've known you
coming.
for a couple of minutes
Look,
now.
Stoney,
and-
look, that a couple, just a click. Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yes.
Mhm. It has
So
been.
it was good having you on the show.
Actually, I've known your family for a long time. Your sister
Yes.
was on the dance team, and we won't talk about your brother.
We won't talk
No,
about
we
him.
won't
We won't talk about him.
We won't
Right.
talk about your brother. But yes, so
but
it's really great. It's
if
really great to
there-
catch up.
If there is anybody out there who is looking to reach out to us, you can basically type in Retrospect Pod anywhere and find us. But we have a Facebook page /Retrospect Pod, or you can give us ideas for topics, or you can just reach out and comment to us. And if your comment doesn't fit, which we've actually had a handful of times,
Number of times
we
there.
have a Gmail, which is getoffendedtogether@gmail.com, and you can send us your more prolonged testimonials, stories, and all the other good stuff. But anyways, until next time, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
Goodbye.
You're the best. Peace.